Webinars are hot. In a world where more and more brands are concluding that they must also be content creators, finding the right voice is a crucial starting point. Whereas videos and social audiences are now central to consumer marketing strategies, in the business-to-business space, webinars are fast becoming the most important part of the content mix. As a content marketing professional, I've produced hundreds of videos for social and traditional media platforms and currently work with one of the largest podcast networks in the country. So for me, understanding how webinars work in the B2B space is both essential to my professional development and an exciting form of content creation. According to a study commissioned by digital agency Demandwave, 41% of B2B marketers cite webinars as the best marketing tactic for driving revenue, outpacing white papers, published case studies, online video, infographics, and mobile apps. I've set out to discuss webinars with one of the foremost experts in the field, Matt Lay, president of the Streaming Network in Toronto. Together, we've created this multi-part series of videos and podcasts, the webinar Lessons from the Front Line, or How I Learned to Live with Never Getting a Second Chance with Live Virtual Events. Welcome back to the webinar, Lessons from the Front Line. With me, as usual, is Matthew Lay, president of the Streaming Network. Last time, we started talking about financial services, but it's such a broad topic with so many nuances and interesting issues, we barely touched on the actual subject of the webinar.
Yep.
So, let's start there. What does a Strong Advisor webinar program look like?
When I look at the strongest programs that we have out there, we'll go back to some of the things that we just said, is that they're, first off, there's something that you can count on. They're dependable. Mm-hmm. So it's not something that happens, once or twice a year. Clearly, it's a program that's in place. And it's generally a program that has a high volume of content available on demand. So some of if you look at just the CE, some of it is around what's going on right now. So, huge webinars every year are like the Trump effect or economic updates where they feature an economist, because the advisors want to know what's going on out there so they can make intelligent choices for their customers. But sometimes they need to know about specific, whether it be the life cycle that someone's in. So new family versus someone getting ready for retirement. Maybe they need to know about certain types of products because, new products are entering the market. They're hearing a lot about it. They haven't been comfortable moving there. And so they got to learn about that. So having a good library that says to the advisor, come to me, I've got pretty much something on everything that you're looking for, and you can get all your credits for the year just by coming here, is a good program.
For sure.
A better program takes that and adds thought leadership, practice management. Advisors in the end want to make money, just like fund companies and like the Streaming Network does. And so part of that is being the smartest guy in the room and knowing what you should invest in. And the other part is, how do you run your business in a more efficient way? Or how do you do this in a way that makes sense? And so adding in practice management and thought leadership around that really adds value. And the companies that I see doing that have a really ease of access site, everyone's coming to it, you can get a good amount of content to get all of your credits for the year and maybe learn a thing or two about how to run your business better, they generally also have traditional marketing. Not pitching, but information on their products being put in front of people saying, buy this fund or work with this PM because this is going to help your people make money and it's going to make you money. And it's funny that that's the last step in the program, but that is generally what I see a fully flushed out one.
Right.
And then the next trend that I'm seeing right now, and we're talking about it a lot, is they're recognizing the fact that just like any company that has those customers or those prospects that are engaged and will show up to go through the gate and watch a webinar, that they've got this group out here who maybe don't know them that well, they're not quite as warm of a prospect, they probably may not even take a call from them at this stage of the game. They're checking them out. Or a younger generation who, doesn't, they can get their credits quick or whatever the reason is, and they don't want the formats that we're giving. And so one customer of ours is, they are not from Toronto. They actually fly in and they'll be in this studio and doing shooting video for 3 days, and they're using that video to target their high net worth advisors. And the idea there being is that they're getting something special, right? That the rest of the world did. Everyone got the audio webinar, everything got whatever it was, they're targeting that. Another firm is using this model, right, where they're using the podcast to be distributed out to hopefully their thing, the younger demographic, the likes the portable media. And so it may be one message around education, one message around thought leadership, one message around product updates, but it's being delivered, slightly differently for 3 different audiences, and it's showing that just like traditional marketing, recycling, reusing of content, it's becoming very big. It's becoming very big in financial services as well.
Right. So the sector itself, I mean, it's obviously a very important one, and it's a big one.
Yeah.
But there's financial services itself. We're talking. There's a much bigger thing
Yeah.
going on here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is when we look at the stats, this is not just this thing, right?
No, 750,000 employees are not all in this advisor communication space.
Yeah.
Actually, it's probably a pretty small group,
Yeah.
right?
So how do you approach that? I mean, obviously that's a big opportunity
Yeah.
for you, and there's lots of opportunities for them to take advantage of the sorts of services you guys offer. What are your approaches in that?
Well, there's a number of different places where it gets used. So with all those employees, there's departments within banks that are some of the biggest companies in Canada. If we dissect them out, they're probably in that top 500, and so they've got a ton of employees. They're geographically dispersed. They got locations all across Canada, or in some cases, U.S., South America, whatever it might be. And those department heads and those groups, they've got their own budgets and their own things that they need to hit. And so internal communications is big. And internal communications has also been a struggle, like everything, when you have something. Another thing that we have been seeing is that it's still going out and seeing people as part of it. Whether that be direct to consumer or in a B2B space where they're looking at businesses or the advisor market. And so they are still wanting to go out and have these physical events, but like everyone else in the world, they're not getting as many people to said events, or they're not able to cover the entire country because Canada's massive. And so expanding the reach of those events is always been a part of what we do, but again, that sector's growing as well. And then finally, it's always been thought that the webinar itself was not for B2C, or that the webcast is what we used to call it before. But there's been a lot of change in the world now. It's becoming a way of reaching your consumer directly. And so we're starting to get it in certain segments, seeing a straight B2C play now where they're going directly and having conversations with the end user, you or me, who's got a bank account with them or an insurance product or a mutual fund.
Right. And that applies. I mean, these guys go to people's houses all over the place. They
Yeah.
could literally be knocking off a whole lot of visits with doing some sort of webcast.
Yeah.
But then there's also financial literacy, the opportunity to, and that goes to thought leadership, right? The ability for these organizations to put forward, provide advice, and demonstrate that they're on top of the issues that people care about.
That's right.
and really target a large group of people.
Yeah.
Let's talk about internal communications, though. As a platform, the opportunity to do the things you said, because a lot of these companies have offices everywhere. Like, let's sort of break that down.
Well, so as big as these firms are, again, they're banks, right? They're housing our personal information, bank account information. We've all seen, maybe we haven't. Most of us have seen Fight Club and the doomsday scenario of someone hacking somewhere and getting rid of all of that data. And so they're a lockdown environment. They're historically have not been as bandwidth rich as people might think. And so along with the bandwidth, the multiple different types of locations, branch versus office, tower downtown versus remote small office building out in the rural area, and security goes along with it as well, keeping things sort of in the organization, has made a lot of these firms turn inward and not outward. Mm-hmm. So they will buy technology, house it internally, and use that to run events, turning the IT manager or a member of the IT team into the webcast producer or virtual event producer, or whatever you want to call it, using products. And these products are amazing. We use some of them ourselves, but like Skype for Business or Cisco's new Spark product, or some sort of hybrid between a video conference and another product to make it happen. And so the fact is these products are not the best for what they're trying to do. They're trying to talk to 400 employees at once. These products are meant for me and you to chat to one another. And the people that are putting on the events are IT managers, making sure they're secure and that they work, and they do for the most part, but they're not professionals in that space. Right. And so, mistakes happen, problems occur. And there's been, I've been in many of these places where they said, yeah, we tried that, 10 years ago, or we backed away, or we could never get that to work. And they will go to like a conference call or record it or whatever it is. So they have, the bigger you get, if you haven't set it up right, you've got a lot of struggles in doing this internal comm side.
Right. Yeah. And I've seen examples where people try to use professional cameras and the platform just isn't built for that at all. It's built for a laptop and a little camera in there, and that's how everyone communicates. It's all pixelated. So.
You got that the worst thing. I love hearing these like, well, if I can do this from my phone, we should be able to do this easily. And the amount of things wrong in that sentence, I don't think we have time to talk about today.
That's another podcast.
That's another podcast. Yeah. Like let's go through that and dissect all the things that are different about that and what you're trying to do when you talk to 500 employees on one network.
Through your phone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
okay, let's talk about what's working well. In terms of like what are you seeing like that actually is working to sort of meet these kinds of challenges?
Yeah. Well, first you got to follow the IT lead, and the reason why they're using a product like Skype for Business is they're a Microsoft shop. They've vetted the product. And even if it's not the right product, maybe for an event, it's been vetted and it's going to work on everyone's computer. And so if you're a financial services firm looking to get into doing these types of events, especially if they're going to include video for large volumes of staff, you'll want to standardize on a product. And by standardizing on a product, you can ensure that desktop knows what needs to be done so that it can work. Help desk is informed. The network guys understand what's going on. The end users have a comfort in the experience. Clearly, I'd like you to standardize on my product, but in general, when you got 5-6 things going on and people don't know if they're dialing a phone or going through their computer, if this one works on their mobile, if they're allowed to do it this way, you're going to have end user issues that are not real, a poor experience, and then a lack of adoption. You want to the best, in our experience, it's always worked best when we didn't throw out all the good work that the IT team did. So leveraging this existing technology and enhancing upon it is the best bet. So if you can find a tool that can help take maybe Skype for Business that's working really well and expand it to a larger audience or offer more services around it through an integration. Then those integrations can be quite simple. I mean, we integrate with Skype for Business, but it's basically Skype connecting in as an endpoint into our system, and then we're able to launch it out to a larger group. But making sure that you don't, throw away. Like a lot of times what we'll see is you've got all the stuff that's here and it kind of works, and the fact that one part of it doesn't work, it's like, someone hires us and brings us in.
Right.
And then we're coming in with all these cameras and we're coming in with all this, like a completely redundant scenario. Sometimes it's needed, but it usually works best when the two things connect.
Right.
And if you've done that and you pick a partner where they're the one you're going to go to, that's a partner. A vendor is someone you call every once in a while, and you might call the vendor that sits next to them. But a partner is someone that you work with. So when we're partnering with someone and they've subscribed to the platform or they just decided that they want to just work with us, and we have those conversations with IT or their AV, and we know what they have there, now we can help make sure mistakes don't happen.
Right.
Someone calls in and speaks to the account rep or the engineer on the project, and he's like, no, that's not going to work there.
Right.
We've been down this road. We know why. Call Jim, but here's what you are going to have to do to make that specific project work.
Right.
And in those cases, in general, is where you see the greatest success, higher adoption, and lower costs because you're not duplicating efforts. You're not, having people burn cycles learning a process all the time. It's something that continuously evolves.
Right. So pick a partner, not a vendor.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, pick a partner, not a vendor. It's cheesy and self-serving thing for me to say, but I know that we charge a lot more when we're doing onesies and twosies than when we do it full-blown.
Right.
And I know that whether you pick me or someone else, it's going to be a better experience long-term. Because even if they are insufficient and not as good as us, you're going to work out processes with them that will make sure that it works.
Right, and that's the thing about a partner, right?
Yeah.
You're in there. You're actually providing advice, not just showing up day of, plugging a bunch of things in.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, if you're there a bunch, and in this case, in internal comms, quite often there's a subsection of the company that you're talking to all the time. There's the doers who do whether they run the AV and the technology side of it, or they're the facilitators for us to get into it. There's that group. There's the event team that's always getting those, oh, would it be cool if we could do like a drone shot when they're coming into the auditorium? And so you create those relationships, you understand dynamics internally about X, Y, or Z. And yeah, I mean, it's like any other relationship. You're able to do a better job for the customer if you know all of that.
Right. And you guys have worked with just about every room in Toronto where these events happen, right? Probably worked with almost all the facilitators.
We still get asked to go into rooms where I don't understand why the decision's been made when there's so many other rooms that are. But yeah. I mean, we've worked in a lot of rooms in Toronto, and when we get the partnerships in place, or when we're working with a lot of the financial services, they have their own rooms. Some of them better than others, but they have their own rooms that they like to do things from because all the staff can just culminate
show up
there.
Yeah.
So then we start learning that, and then so where it generally goes eventually is we start making recommendations, like to the AV guys, like you should buy these two things. Then we don't gotta lug this crap out every time. Right. It's cheaper for the customer, it's built in, it's more foolproof as well, less stress on us. And so as that partnership evolves, so do their internal competencies and what it is that they're doing.
Amazing, great. You mentioned roadshows,
yep.
And product launches.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
It's the simple story that I've been saying for 10 years since I've been doing this, is that, you know, the world is changing and there's less people that just want to get out of the office and go somewhere. Or they're not allowed anymore. Or they value, you know, shaking hands with you less than they do what you're saying or your content and all of that. And so, I mean, it doesn't matter what industry I'm in, they can boast and they can talk about the successful event that they had. In general, in-person attendance continues to shrink year over year. And so some of the most coveted events that someone would hold, the biggest events that they would hold, they're not having the same reach. And so every year this side of the business starts growing and expanding, and people start saying, hey, we need to reach a greater audience, that secondary audience, those people that aren't that into us and not coming into the physical room. And so everything from, you know, the PM roadshows that might hit 4 major cities across the country, to a CEO who really wants to get out and see everyone who works for a bank or a major company, but he can't do that. He can go out one day in one region, and where it makes sense, they'll get people there, but he won't hit everybody, right? And so the hybrid event, the physical with a virtual element, just expands the reach of anything that you're doing. And that has just been a consistent growth sector for us since we started the business. Even though when we started the business, that's basically all we did. But even year over year, it continues to grow because, you know, that there's a reality there.
Yeah.
So
let's. One of the things you mentioned was sort of the whole business to the B2C side of things, and probably nowhere else. The financial services sector really does. You know how like they've got this entire audience, this consumer audience.
Yeah.
So let's get a little bit more deeper into that, because you did touch on a few things there.
Yeah. So we had some early exposure with online brokerages, direct investing, basically your online trading houses, who had a similar problem, I guess, in that they needed to educate these people, right? They need to educate those who are going to go on and spend their money on their platform. You know, those people that understand the platform, there's a bunch of things that go into it. And so we started seeing webinars and things like that as a tool to educate the direct investors so that they knew what they were doing, and also that they used their platform. And that was a B2C sort of play. And when we started doing that, it was fun because if you remember the last podcast, the average number of viewers on a webinar or a really good webinar might get over 1,000, and those data points. I mean, we're getting tens of thousands of people to these webinars, mainly on demand, because it wasn't something that was happening at 2 o'clock on Wednesday when they were in the middle of their workday and they had to say, maybe, maybe not. It was something they needed. So at night or whatever, the data feeds that were flowing through on this project was just like, at one point in time, we had we had to go in and look at our cloud connecting provider that takes data feeds from us and puts them in third-party systems. As it keeps breaking, they're like, what is going on over there? Like 30,000 people watched this thing in the last week. And it's just because it's this huge audience, right? But in general, getting out to in certain spaces, the webinar works for B2C. But it's not the best tool, I don't think. But the virtual event has been growing and really is. And the difference that I mean there is things like YouTube Live, Facebook Live, taking something that's experiential. Every time you go somewhere, a financial services company is doing something where they're giving you, like at a fair or whatever, they hire these experiential companies. They sponsor events everywhere. And those events, you get to see them while you're there, but no one else knows that it's happening. And so we've done some fun things where we're doing live streams out to John Q. Public to show those great experiences, and it's an awareness play. We've done some stuff that is an education play because they also have the funds and the connections to reach high and wide. I mean, before a budget gets passed in this country, the chief economists of RBC and TD, they get to look at it before we know about it,
right,
to make sure that they don't whatever. So the people within some of these institutions are highly plugged in and so they can do some really cool stuff, and they do really cool stuff, just that we don't all get to see it. So now we're getting to see that go out to the consumer, and although everything we do is on the Elite, the On24 platform, the fundamentals of taking a video feed from a venue, whether that venue is the studio or a corporate boardroom, or it's the Rogers Center, doesn't matter, getting that feed out to any medium is the same skill set. The same things have to happen right to make that work. And so we've been brought in as partners to do those types of things, right, which is fun for the guys because, when we started the business, streaming was new. I used to say that it was magical. I'd have to walk into rooms and people would say, how do you know it's going to work? And I'm like, could you imagine me asking you, how do I know I'm going to make money in this mutual fund? Or how do I know that, that burger is going to taste good? Like, this is the company that I run. This is what we do. But it was so magical to people. It was so hard to fathom that this video would go out and people wouldn't have tons of buffering, even though they did early on. Everyone had buffering. But anyways, that this thing would happen, and then we knew it would work, and that we had a process for it, that we were constantly reassuring people that it just worked. And so we've been at it that long, and then all of a sudden it got super easy, right? The comment about the phone, it got super easy. Yep. Everyone can do it. And then so they all tried, and then they realized, oh no, there actually are things you need to do to make this work. And so early on, we did some fun stuff where we were broadcasting from TIFF and all of that because it was magic and no one knew how to do it. And then people learned how to do it, and then they failed at it a bit, and now it's coming back with a lot of our big corporate customers. And so it's nice to see these guys back, on the red carpet or at a hockey game or something like that, doing something fun and different than, the conventional webinar.
Right. And you guys have done Facebook Live, you've done YouTube Live, the navigating all those mistakes you guys have now done all that.
We've done platforms that I didn't even know existed because I'm not really that technical. I just play that guy on TV, but all the things are the same. I used to make a joke when I was in a room. People say to me, are you worried? Are you afraid of YouTube, Matt? Is that going to kill your business? And at the time, I said I was not afraid because at that time it had no live, so I was like, I'm safe. But in general, whether it's a webinar or a webcast, whether it's a YouTube Live, or whether it's holograms, that was my big thing. If we got into hologram broadcasting and you want to do a virtual hologram of you over here doing whatever, all the steps we took back then for a simple audio stream on site would be the same as this. There'd be more gear involved, right, more bandwidth, I'm assuming, but the steps that the guys take and the steps that we took to make it a success would be the same. Right. And even from just because it's a hologram doesn't mean that people are going to like it better. You still got to follow even the best practice we talked about last time about engaging your audience and having a dialogue, or else they're going to, the gimmick will run out soon. So yeah, taking what we've done over all these years and applying it to these different mediums is basically the same thing: virtual event production.
Yeah. That's great. So let's we've covered a lot of ground here, but we usually do a moment of Zen.
Yeah.
We're going to keep this one relatively straightforward. If you've got a message that you want to provide to the people in the sector, what would that message be?
I got a few messages. I'm going to keep them short.
What messages?
What messages
would you provide to the people in the sector?
First off, I would say, and I say this often when I'm in financial services is not the only sector I would say this. I would say, look outside your industry. Like, look outside. Some of these companies spend so much time looking at what each other are doing that they forget to look at what others are doing. So find a relevant. You know what your role is in your space. You know who you are. And when you know who you are, look at what the other guy who's like you is doing, right? So maybe in Canada, RBC is looking at Microsoft's practices or whatever it might be, but look at someone outside to see what they're doing, because it will be an indicator of something that's probably going to work for you. Well, look at the guys who are doing it well, but you know what I mean. And stop looking at everyone else in your space and emulating. There's an element of Me Too we all need to have, but you're not going to separate yourself by doing it, this kind of the same thing as the other guy, but not as good. And then I would, if you're not doing it already and you're prepping for maybe some technology upgrades and stuff, start looking at where are your data gaps. Like, start plugging all of your data gaps now, whether or not you have the capacity to fix it all. Figure out what you would like for this system to talk to this system to talk to this system. Because in some of these deployments that we're walking into, even in the best cases where people know they got the mind map for exactly what they want. In the last 12 months, while we were going through this process, other products were purchased that were closed and could not get data out in the way that was needed. And so they had the map in their mind, but they didn't think about that gap being a problem until it was too late.
Right.
And then the final thing is, and this is bigger, I find, in financial services than in some others, is they produce content by medium, and what I'm finding is we're spending budgets on short format video production, webinar production, long format video production, podcast production with 3 to 4 vendors. Sometimes it's us. Sometimes we're doing this for a company, saying the same message over and over again in different mediums for different audiences, when there is a better way of doing that, right? Like, when we do these, we do them as the video podcast, the audio podcast gets released, the webinar gets released, the short format video, and then blogs are written and people interact with you. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that goes on because we're reusing that content. So I think that this sector should start talking to one another within the organization, start figuring out how do we reuse this content better, and because they need to be producing more, like everyone does, and that would be, they'll get more ROI, I think, out of what they spend with us or with anybody else they're working with.
And it's good for the environment.
And it's good for the environment. Well, it actually is.
It actually is.
Yeah.
Well, that's that. That is our podcast.
Yep.
Matthew, thank you once again for downloading all this great information. Our next podcast is going to be on the legal sector.
Yeah,
we're going to do a deep dive into that, so watch for that.
And you know what? In this case, the financial services people might watch this and they're going to want to tune out, right? Because what do they care about what's going on in legal marketing? But if they want to feel good about what they're doing, they should tune into the legal marketing one, because they got more struggles than you guys do.
There you go. Perfect. So everyone should watch that.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.